Now we want to turn back to Priory Hall. Yesterday we spoke to Sinead Power, the Priory Hall resident, in relation to her particular plight. It really is horrendous. At 10:30 today, this morning, the City Council are seeking court approval to stop paying accommodation costs to the former residents of Priory Hall. So we reckon it's about 39 grand on average to fix each apartment. They had to move out. They're living in different types of accommodation and they're receiving some assistance. But the council want to stop that. If the court rules in the council's favour, the residents may have to start paying rent for their temporary homes as well as making mortgage repayments for a house they can't live in. For many, this could lead to mortgage defaults. Yesterday we spoke to Sinead Power. She's a Priory Hall resident, and asked her what toll the situation was taking on her.
It's unbelievable, Ivan. I mean, you're not sleeping. You're okay one minute, you're crying the next minute. Your future is just, you don't know what's going to happen.
So in a message to the government, what would you say?
Help us, have some dialogue, get all the stakeholders around the table, let's find a solution.
Sinead Power there. Well, joining us in studio is George Finglas, whose daughter Rosaleen owns a duplex apartment in the Priory Hall complex. Shortly we'll be speaking to local Fine Gael TD for Dublin North East, Terence Flanagan. As always, if you'd like to join the conversation, send us a text at 53106, call us at 1890 453 106, tweet us at breakfastnt, or of course you can email us at breakfast@newstalk.ie. George, you're most welcome. Let's start at the beginning. This affects your daughter Rosaleen. Let's go back to the point where she wanted to get a home of her own.
Thanks, Ivan and Chris, for having me. It all began for Rosaleen, I suppose, as early as 2003 when she returned from Australia. And I suppose she felt the need to put down roots. And she asked me, her father, for obvious reasons, for advice in her family. And she was wondering the 100% mortgages were being handed out like snuff at a wake. And I advised her, work hard, get your 10% deposit. And she took that advice and she did, even though she came back to me after and she said she could have got 110% deposit and she could have got bought the furniture and the car. Now, I advised her, forget it, because, people who take those type of what you would be paying a 50-year mortgage. So therefore, you'd be buying furniture and a car over 50 years. So
she took her mortgage for how much and bought what?
285,000, and she bought a duplex apartment. Looked on plans, because she bought off plans, as they all did at the time. It looked a marvellous buy. She, as you said, worked it on all the ponderables on the basis of where she wanted to live, family supports, work, friends, shops, cinemas, infrastructure, M50, everything. And it looked a very good buy at the time. Now, she put down her deposit in 2005. And I think it was 2006 that the Health and Safety Authority closed down that site. And I have to say I'm amazed at how they allowed it to reopen, because there had to be so many reasons. I don't particularly know, but I know that the Health and Safety Authority were involved at that time. Rosaleen moved in to the site on the 21st of May 2000 into her apartment the 21st of May 2007. She wasn't in it a couple of weeks, and there was leaks coming from everywhere. We didn't know where we were. It started to make her ill from the very start. I'm here telling Rosaleen's story because Rosaleen's actually too ill. Now, I'm glad to say and to report to your listeners that Rosaleen is in recovery and she's doing well. But again...
she moved in 2007, was it?
In May 2007.
So there'd been all these problems during the construction phase.
Yes.
But when she moved in, was she happy? Because there's stories about leaks and skips full of wooden floors every week. When did all that start to happen?
After that. She was only in and the leaks started to appear on... She was after getting new floors put down before she moved in. The floor started to lift. There was stains on the wall. There was puddles on the tiles. And I got involved. I got Home Bond and I got Colport, the builders responsible. And I asked Home Bond to oversee the repairs. They duly did, and they signed off on those repairs. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, worse still, the rain, 2007, I think we had 80 consecutive days of rain. The floors were lifting again. Another new floor that Coldport had replaced, that was lifting again. And at this stage, Rosalind was really too ill to deal with it, and I flipped. I got back onto home bond. I got involved, and I threatened them that I would take them to court and look for punitive damages that are damaging my daughter's health if this wasn't put right. It appeared at the time that the falls that should have been put away from the building were put to it. I've never saw any workmanship as bad in all my life. Even a junior child in a junior school would be able to design that.
And when
better.
you got on to the authorities, and presumably you weren't on your own, the neighbours were all having similar, when you got on to the Corpo, when you got on to different authorities...
We weren't on to the Corpo. This is private. It was Coldport. It's not Corpo. It's a private development.
No, I understand that, but the point is this. Surely someone said... There was a planning approval for this. There was Building Control Act approval for this. At any stage did you get onto the public authorities to say, what was the regulator doing about all this?
No, we didn't, because what we were chasing down was the building. Remember, the site wasn't even finished. We're still finishing at this stage. And hindsight's easy. We didn't know that, that it transpired anyway from what I had. Plumbing, hand tight. So when the floors went down, it was designed to leak, because... no doubt that there was other things between the company that didn't pay or whatever and the contractor that didn't get paid, but it was then. You see, a lot of people in new development, they didn't know each other.
Okay. Well, some of those contractors are not here to verify that, but let's just move on from 09 to 11. What was happening? You had home bond and you've been to...
Well, no, I was talking about 07.
Yeah.
When she moved in. This was the build up to that. When, after the first fix, the home bond certified, everything leaked again. Walls had to be taken down, studs, the whole lot. And I was involved, and Rosaline was moved into another apartment she's in block 2, she was moved into an apartment in block 9. And every single fitting in that apartment, the temporary apartment for the 8 weeks she was in, it leaked. She was beside herself, unbelievably ill over this. And, it was just totally unacceptable from my point of view. The home bond were involved. I had them involved. I had photographs to prove.
Did you get a solicitor involved?
I didn't get a solicitor involved because I expected the fact that the building and that this was going to be put right as due process. It's very easy for people to refer to solicitors. That's money. That's big money. You must remember that you're talking about your child that's after borrowing, like 285,000, such a millstone around their neck, and they wouldn't have been able to afford.
Can I move it forward? What happened? You keep coming back to 07. Let's go forward between 07 and 11. What happened?
Well, certainly in 2009, Dublin City Council moved their 20% of their tenants that they had in there. They moved them out for fire safety reasons. I work in Dublin City Council, so I'm not actually going to comment on that part of it, because there's due process and there's courts and other procedures that's going to go on for that. But the reality is that the owner-occupiers were left there in the development, and they were basically beside themselves. They were having meetings. I certainly attended the meetings. There was a new management company, but the influence on maybe Coldport or developers themselves and management companies, leaves a lot to be
desired. Were you really going round in circles for 4 years, or what was actually happening?
Well, worse than circles, in the sense that a lot of I'm aware now, since I suppose had. I wrote a very personal letter that you have a copy of, I ended up, it's posted on the Support of Priory Hall Facebook page, and people can read it there. But it was a very emotional letter, and it was with Rosalind's blessing. It certainly mentions about the illness and what happened to her as a result of Priory Hall. Actually, Priory Hell is what it's referred to by many. But I believe it's part of her recovery in the sense of dealing with the issue. I've asked her to park it, but as her father and still our guardian, as far as I'm concerned. I always will.
Okay, can we move on from the physical defects to the mortgage side of this? We're dealing here, as you said, 80% of them are owner-occupiers. In other words, they got a mortgage. What's your daughter's situation, Rosalind's situation, in relation to who she got a mortgage with and the repayments on that for what is really a dud duplex apartment?
Absolutely. Rosalind's mortgage is with Ulster Bank, and she's on a 3-month moratorium at the moment, which is due up, I think, in the next week or so. Rosalind's already made the decision, which I'm very happy to, that she is not going back to Priory Hall.
Has she stopped payments?
Well, she has, in the sense that she's on a moratorium, but her mind is made up in the sense that, I mean, she's basically ill, so with regards to money and affording it, that's another day's work. You have to realise that when people get mortgages, it's based on them being fit and able to work. This particular predicament has made her ill, so whether she's in a position to pay it, certainly at the moment she's not.
Well, what I'm driving at, George, is that the ultimate sanction that any mortgage provider has is, we'll repossess your house. That's the big bad stick that they wave around. In this case, they're kind of welcomed to the property back because it's in the state it's in. So what's happening there in terms of the mortgage providers, who in fairness provided the finance in good faith and are now faced with a situation that they don't probably want the property back?
Well, you say in good faith, but I believe all of the banks, the financial institutions, that the Irish ones that we own, and the bailouts and the rest of it, there's a huge question for me morally for their involvement. In other words, what inspections were done on their behalf, and what they expect of people. The people of
well, they'll say they did it in good faith. Well, can I ask you now, right, so that's obviously a desperate situation, like it can neither lead nor drive, for all the mortgages. What would you like to see done now?
There's a common sense approach to this. Stark reality is the Irish taxpayers, you, me, and the rest of the people that's working out there, are eventually going to pay for every single bit of this. I reckon it's possibly going to, running at the moment, it's going to cost €1 million every 3 months. It's not sorted. So approximately 4 million a year. In reality, one way or the other, whether it's community welfare officers that subvents them if they go into other property. A lot of these people, this is made a mill. These were the taxpayers, the workers.
So could you be more specific? Is it that you want the public authorities to fix the building, provide you with alternative accommodation, or what?
I think that the preferred option would be, and I believe there's a win-win situation here, that they would be offered maybe properties of their choice to be able to move their mortgages to, that may be in NAMA. I've saw literally dozens of half-finished sites, horseshoes, little housing units with 20 houses, with 9 of them let and 11 unlet.
Okay, so give them alternative property, I get that, but what would happen to the Priory Hall buildings?
Well, the Priory Hall buildings should be, and probably will be, knocked, and it's very important that you understand this, that what has happened so far with Priory Hall, the surface stuff that has brought about what we're talking about here today, that the closure and the fire safety aspect of it, that's only the surface stuff. What is in the foundations? It's been said to me, the styrofoam, the electrician reported drilling into a main load column and his drill going flying through it, that the styrofoam, how many skips was taken off the site? So 100%
But you see, I was under the impression that you wanted the 39 per thousand per unit to be repaired and moved back in. What you seem to be telling me
Absolutely
is you don't
not.
want to move back in.
I was at a meeting with the Priory Hall residents last night, and to a person, there's nobody wants to move back in there.
Okay.
And they're emphatic on that.
It is 9:20 on Thursday's News Talk Breakfast. You're listening to George Finglas, whose daughter Rosaline is a resident, or one of the evacuated residents of the Priory Hall complex in Dublin. And the reason we're speaking about this is because just over an hour, at 10:30, the Supreme Court will make its decision. At the moment, by court order, nobody's allowed to live in that complex. So the council is paying for their rent in their temporary accommodation. The council doesn't think it should be liable for that, and that's what the Supreme Court is deciding. So potentially today, if the court decides in the council's favour, these people won't be allowed to live in the houses that they're paying mortgages for, and they'll also have to pay rent on where they're living now. But the reason we're talking about this is because what is Priory Hall the start of? Yesterday on this programme at this time, the government chief whip talked about what else might be happening around the country when we asked him about this and what other developments will be there. And Ivan, loads of listeners are asking us on the text line, who inspected these? Who approved these off the plans? And we have spoken to architects and we've spoken to fire safety experts. What was the figure they gave us? That
14%, which is about 1 in 7 were actually looked at in terms of, I'm not sure whether it was the fire inspections to see compliance or whether it was the building control regulations, but simply the scale of development that was going on in Dublin was such that they simply did desktop approvals.
Yeah, around the country, the same story. So at 22 minutes past 9, we want to talk about the end game. What's going to happen here? And we're joined on the line by Terence Flanagan, who's the Fine Gael TD for Dublin North East. Good morning, Terence.
Good morning, there.
Terence, firstly, I saw the letter that the Minister for Justice sent you and you made representations on behalf of the Priory Hall residents. Alan Shatter said constitutionally, he's the Minister for Justice, he can't get involved with a case that's before the courts. So we'll take that as a given. But what, in your opinion, should be done for these residents?
Okay, well, good morning. Well, firstly to say, I attended the protests outside the Dáil yesterday with the Residents Committee, and also last night was a 3-hour meeting in relation to Priory Hall, and just to sympathise, I suppose, firstly with all the residents and with George and his daughter Rosaline. I mean, there's huge stress, huge anxiety, huge pressure around what has actually gone on down in Priory Hall. To say, from my personal perspective, I have raised this issue with the Minister for Finance in relation to the mortgages, and at present he has details of 56 of the 89 owned properties, and the information we'd have would be the lenders that the mortgages are actually with. So he's looking at that to see if there's anything that can be done to allow the residents have a breathing space while the legal process is going through. So we're looking there, obviously, is to freeze the interest and to freeze the penalties which are accumulating at this present moment in time.
All of that's temporary, and fair enough. I get that don't punish people while there's a legal process ongoing. I get that that's very important. What's the end game, though, Terence? You're a member of government. A member of the government party? What's the end game for these residents?
Well, in my opinion, there is 3 options here. One of them would be that the complex be demolished and that the mortgages be written off. Now, I don't know how realistic that is going to happen. The second one then is that the residents stay in the properties they're in at present and that the mortgages will transfer into them properties. Or thirdly, that I suppose Priory Hall be remediated and that it be put back to the standard that it should have been built in the first instance.
Okay,
and that the residents move back in. So at this moment in time, I mean, there is, as you say, there is the court case before the Supreme Court this morning. Now, that's just for hearing. We don't expect any decision to be made on that. So as a result of that, I would expect that the contracts to be extended on the premises, on the homes that the residents are currently living in under the temporary accommodation.
And from the residents that we've spoken to, option 3 that you said there about fix Priory Hall, move back in. First of all, a lot of them can't stand the sight of it because of what they've been through. But also, in 2 years' time, if you're looking at the Irish Times property section and you see Priory Hall, someone selling, are you going to even dare buy that property? They think it's tainted, and that taint just can't be fixed. How serious a runner is that second option, that if they like the Nama property which they've been housed in, or perhaps they're given a choice of a comparable property, that their mortgage would be transferred over, they've paid their mortgages for the most part up to date, and they just carry on? How likely is that? Because that would be a permanent solution for the residents.
Well, I can't make that decision. Obviously, that will be made by the Minister for the Environment and the government directly. I mean, that is a situation that the residents are looking for, which is being relayed back to me, and which I will relay back up the line. I mean, the place no doubt could be put right, and it could be finished to the highest standards and to the highest quality that it should have been finished in the first place. And if that was done, I mean, that would give, and if there were certificates produced to say that it was produced to the highest possible standard, I mean, that would give comfort. But I do understand from the personal point of view of the residents that they're very unhappy what has happened here, that they are innocent people in what has actually happened.
Okay.
And just to say on that I mean, the Minister for the Environment was very quick to change to change the system, and he's looking for mandatory certificates of
Terence,
compliance to confirm that, when they sign off in the future, that the statutory requirements of the building regs are actually being complied with.
Terence, just finally, is there a fear in government that what you do with Priory Hall will set a precedent because there are others out there?
Well, the fear, I suppose at the moment, this is going through the courts, and it's difficult for the Minister for the Environment to directly intervene, but that's not to say he's not keeping a close eye. He is monitoring the situation. He's keeping a close eye on things. Yes, something like Priory Hall has never happened before in this country, and it will set a precedent. So obviously there is going to be there's going to be more concern as to the decision that will be made. But please God, my hope is that the residents of Priory Hall, nobody wants to see them homeless. Nobody wants to see them moving back to half-finished homes. They are under huge stress, under pressure, huge pressures at the moment, and this issue has to be resolved, and will be resolved, no doubt, in due course.
Terence Flanagan, Fine Gael TD for Dublin North East.
George Finglas, give us your brief reaction to Terence's comments.
Yeah, just a couple of points here. I firmly believe that NAMA should provide the funding for the construction unit to be set up to correct future Priory Halls. After all, it was the construction industry, in the sense of people, developers that would be in NAMA, that would be at fault anyway. So I believe that certainly a pool of money should come out of that, instead of what we're ordinary people are reading about other people going into the profit. Another thing, it's very important that people realise that the Priory Hall owners are a unique group of people being homeless, mortgage payers being homeless in 2012, and I stress the word unique there. I don't think there's any other country in the world would have such things. Terence referred to people to stay in their current properties. That would not be a runner, because they were placed in those properties as a result of them. People, a property of their choice. It's like you, if you're going out to buy tomorrow, you should have a choice. But listen, can I just make one other point before I finish? Anyway, I want to make an apology to Taoiseach for an inference I made to him being anti-Dublin on his Facebook homepage. I want to withdraw that, because after all, he does get is living from Dublin. However, I do feel if Priory Hall was in Castlebar, I think he would have intervened.
Okay, we'll leave you with the last word, but certainly we on News Talk Breakfast will continue to campaign on this issue. George Finglas, whose daughter Rosaleen is a Priory Hall resident, has been our guest this morning. Before that, you heard Deputy Terence Flanagan. Yesterday we had Sinead Power, and we await developments in the court today. Thank you, George, for joining us.